I am here today with Carl Magnus Olsson, Associate Professor at Malmö University, where he is associated a research center called the Internet
of Things and People.
What is the Internet of Things and People?
The research center as a whole is it's sort of a response to, there were so many different more technology-driven research agendas that were pushing this, all the connected devices, all the Internet of Things really. Key difference with our research center is really that we're not just looking at the technology, but really looking at the people aspects of it as well. To me, curiosity for different types of questions, I have to ask enough questions, I have to consider enough different options to then over some time see which ones stick with me.
What is your interest then?
I really think, my interests are in, I have two parts of my interests really. One is I'm incredibly curiosity driven, as we already talked about. It's just fun when I don't quite understand stuff, and it's also fun when something isn't figured out yet. Yes. And that gets us to the second part, because I'm also really frustration driven. There's so much that doesn't work like it should. You were fiddling with this camera before we quite got it to work.
Exactly.
And there are so many things that could be improved that are actually quite easy to improve. If you look at curiosity on one end of the spectrum and frustration on the other, and I think in between there is where stuff can happen.
Yes.
And the more frustrated you are, the more you actually stick with it.
Absolutely.
To solve it. So frustration is incredibly important.
It is a big driver.
Yeah.
But is that then a internal frustration that you feel over a certain topic, or is it also a frustration that you experience in users around you or interaction with the society, where you go
left?
Actually, that could be.
It's
something.
more the latter here.
Yeah.
I get frustrated with stuff.
Yeah.
I also get stuff being technology, usually things. But I also get frustrated with users, certainly. Yeah. Because, when a person gets to know another person, yes, we're patient. We start here in Sweden. We start with a fika.
We do.
And we have some patience for the quirks of other people, and over some time, we get to know them. But if we pick up a new camera or yes, some new piece of technology, we have a very limited span of our attention that we're willing to invest in making it work. Yes. Because it's really, for many users, about it working as you want it to do. Yes. Rather than you understanding that you actually have some sort of responsibility, because it's incredibly naive of everyone to assume that technology will be personalized for you. Yes. It's great when it feels personalized. Yes. But people are really different. Yes. And I say this not because people are very strange, but because the differences of people is something that certainly other disciplines embrace and really appreciate, and I think the world as a whole is better because of it. But that also means we have completely different opinions on everything. So we cannot have personalized technology to that degree that many people expect it to be. Yeah. So therefore we need to also maybe understand that getting to know our stuff takes a little bit more time. Like what we're seeing today in terms of getting to know your technology is there's a big shift towards, people would never open the manual. They would start a YouTube video. Yes. To look at how do you do this. Yes. Someone else has done it for me, and I will follow the easy steps. Yeah, and then you try to follow them and realize that the version you have is slightly different. Yes. So you have to figure out the differences, and that's how you get to know your technology. If you look at wearable technology for exercise and stuff, everyone sells them start using this new smartwatch and your life will change. Yes, you will. And then you start using it and you notice no difference. And this is exactly what happens in industry when they change from one way of working to a different way of working. First, nothing happens. Yeah. And people go, nothing happened. you have to shake them around, and eventually they realize, oh, I do have to change. Sometimes if you're lucky and if you work at it, it actually does improve.
Yeah.
But there's a long period of use or getting into something that is a change before it actually helps. And when products are sold as a pick me up off the shelf and I will change your life, it kind of reduces the user to a very passive role. That kind of is supposed to just use the technology and it will change your life.
Yes.
Rather than it will give you some information that you possibly, hopefully, can get into, and you can change your own life. It's also like we are with people. I mean, I keep coming back to how we as human beings tend to treat technology as completely different than we treat people.
Yes.
And at the same time, I don't think many people actually stop to think about what we're really doing. I mean, technology today is very interactive.
It is.
It wants to be interactive, wants to be more of a sort of human agent than really a technology agent. But many people are still in the mindset of this technology slave almost.
Yeah.
Where the technology just does our business.
Yes.
Takes care of our stuff. And that's fine if people are happy with that. If their life is better because they live it that way, kudos.
Yeah.
But people that are interested in doing more with technology can do more with technology. We do still have a tendency to want to pigeonhole both people and technology. Technology is really easy to pigeonhole because it doesn't bite back.
No.
People will say, I don't like being stereotyped if you do that overly much. But technology, and I'm fine with that actually. I still think that it's really more about our lives than it is about technology's life, even if technology becomes more and more active and sort of living like, if I want to say it. It's still about our life.
But is that, you think, where the technology, like the sensor and interaction between technologies are heading? That they become almost an entity in itself?
I think they have been for a long time, actually. It's just that, I mean, many of the things we take for granted today, like air conditioning in cars, like ventilation systems in buildings, they've been automated forever.
True.
So it's just that today there's a different level of sensor technology that's available to sort of dynamically change what it does. Sure, it could lead to continued completely autonomous systems, just as some of them have been autonomous before.
But is that something that we need to...
I don't think that's going to be super scary. At this point, if we're talking like machine learning, for instance, which is core to this area, the unsupervised machine learning is so far away from practically applicable in large scale. You can do it for very specific purposes very well today, but doing it for a system that sort of lives its own life but is an integrated part of our life, that's a completely different story. There's such a huge lack of data to actually base your decision making on. So it's I don't even want to guess at how many years away it is, but even if popular science wants to talk about the scary future, the realistic research right now is clearly showing that sure, you can do stuff in a controlled environment where you dictate which variables don't change in your experiment, but in real life actually does all the time. But as long as you can control them, you can have this very automated behavior, which is super cool and possibly really useful. But we're so far away from seeing that large scale that I'm not worried at all.
What do you feel is like sort of the hope for your research area in the future?
For my or for the research area as a whole?
Well, let's start with the research area as a whole.
I would say, to me, it's the reason why I'm struggling here is how do I define which parts of the area that I'm answering for right now? So for more automated stuff, for instance, I would say we will see, realistically, we will see the stuff that is very close to us as consumers and potentially professionals within healthcare, for instance.
Yeah.
That we do many times, but we tend to, I mean, it's a routine for us. We can do it at a glance.
Yes.
That stuff is extremely convenient to work with. And yeah, it's not the biggest scientific leaps, to be quite frank, to make it work, make those things sort of work and not be completely different algorithms in one area from another area, but be more generic and just deploy it in different environments. So I think those, even if they're not the biggest scientific leaps, I think the impact on society and users will be tremendous. Like the first smartphones, they weren't in any way revolutionary in any other regard other than packaging convenient stuff together.
Yeah.
There were no huge scientific leaps in each component, but the form factor created by packaging them together made a huge impact on people's lives, and has continued to do so since. We're working very hard. We've been doing a lot of work this fall on sort of involving clinicians, researching clinicians in our studies, sort of trying to make sense of all this data that is collected and looking at how can we validate if this data is useful and what data is useful in what way. Stuff that we've already validated is easily done at home using wearable technology.
Yeah.
And the precision that we are getting is better. I mean, you have to also consider, why are you doing the test? Are you doing the test because you want to show the doctor how well you're doing? Or do you want to represent how you're actually doing? Or do you want to represent, I want medication. I want more help than I'm getting. So people, when they come in and do these tests at hospitals, they're going to have biases that they introduce.
Of course.
So I think if you're fine a little bit further, we can walk across the field and then circle around and go there.
Sounds good.
Anyhow, so collecting data from everyday life is going to be more representative to how that person is actually doing.
So how to integrate that into the healthcare in a manner that clinicians can use and trust.
Yeah, because there are many practical aspects of this, like privacy issues and so on and so forth, that, I mean, yeah, they're complex, and but you really just have to solve them. They're not super easy. It would have been solved already otherwise.
Of course.
But I would really say that understanding how to use everyday technology, consumer grade technology, as added context for clinicians as they're trying to help their patients is extremely impactful. There are other sides to privacy as well, and that is, for instance, how easily you are recognized as a user, even if you don't share your name, gender, anything like that. It's quite easily to re-identify an individual user just by looking at what data they share on their mobile phone, for instance.
Yeah.
All mobile phone actors have this data collection that they do. And customer profiling is huge.
Absolutely.
Not only within mobile phones. I mean,
no, but in all companies.
ICA have been doing this since the 80s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why you have your membership card.
So you get percentages, but we know.
Yeah, we know everything about you.
Yeah.
So, that part of the story isn't new.
But to be anonymous in society is becoming harder.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing that helps us is we're anonymous in the sense that we're lost in everyone else who also isn't anonymous.
Yeah.
The question of who is going to use the data is also relevant, because one of the biggest struggles for companies today is that they have way too much data. They don't know what to do with it. The only way to ensure that you can draw any kind of reasonable conclusions based on your data is to really have worked with the data that you have.
Yeah.
Understand your data. So the relevance of the data that is being shared is extremely low right now. You might be able to re-identify a user, but quite often you can't see anything that actually in practice is that sensitive.
Yeah. But that's
while it's a tremendously important area, I honestly think a lot of the data that is collected right now is likely at some point to just get reduced to old data and therefore not useful, because more and more actors are looking to improve the quality of their data.
Of course.
I mean, machine learning might be, and AI might be what everyone talks about, but what actually creates most value is filtering and labeling and making sure your data, curating your data. So
the person after you can use it and get useful information out of it. Yeah,
and hopefully by sharing your data, you as a user can get a better product.
We did a round.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I'm gonna turn this off.
Yep.
Well, just start by saying thank you.
Sure.
And
thank you. That was really interesting.